Okay, now that we know roughly what form is in music, let's look at a couple of different forms. Um, so the three that I want to look at in this video are something called binary form, something called ternary form, and something called rondo. As you can see, there are a lot of different forms, and this is only a very, very, very short list. There are like probably hundreds of different ways you can organize an A section, a B section, a C section, a D section, an E section, however many you want. In fact, I'm going to talk about one more in addition to these three. I'm going to talk about a fourth one, and I'm going to start with that fourth one right now. The fourth one is called through composed form. What through composed form means is that you would have an A section followed by a B section, followed by a C section, followed by a D section, followed by an E, followed by an F, followed by a G, etc. And it would go on forever. This is typically not how we like music to work, because of what I just said in the previous video. We like our audiences to have that recollection moment, like, oh, I've heard this before. That's what we want to happen usually. You don't have to have that. You don't have to have that at all. But we tend to like that to happen. So through composed form doesn't get used very often. So especially when you're just starting out writing music, I would suggest you don't use through composed form. Just going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. Don't do that. There are ways to do it well, and there are some composers that have done it very, very well. But it's harder than you think. It's actually quite difficult. So let's look at some of these other ones. Binary form. Two things is what binary means. You have an A section and then a B section, and that's it, right? A, B, done. So the B section is going to have some kind of nice ending to it, and the A section is going to have a nice intro to it, maybe, but it's just A and B. So a section of stuff, a section of different stuff, and that's the end. Quite simple. It's called binary form. Super simple. Okay? Let's make it a little more complicated. Ternary form. Now, ternary form, just based on that word, you might think that means it has three different pieces, different parts of music, and it kind of only has two, but three different sections. Ternary form is A, B, A. This is probably, I don't know if I'd like put money on this, but I would say the most common kind of music is ternary form. I guess it depends on the genre, but there is a lot of music written in ternary form. A, B, A. It gives us that repeat of A, so it makes it so that we have something familiar that we get at the end. So we hear some music. Maybe you've got melodies and harmonies and things in here. And then something different, something that contrasts the A section. And then after that different thing, we get it again. So this A section is going to contrast the B section that we just heard, right? So there's a contrast there as well as there. So that makes A, B, A quite rewarding, right? Feels good. We like the way an A, B, A piece feels. The next one I want to show you is a more complicated one, but it's one that I find to be really useful all the time. This is called rondo. Rondo is just a fancy word for it. What it means is we have an A section, and we're going to use this A section. Every other section is going to be the A section. So we're going to go A section, and then something different, B, something that contrasts A, right? And then we're going to do A again. And then we're going to do something that contrasts A again, but something different than before. So we're going to contrast it again, and then we're going to do A again. And this can keep on going. A, B, A, C, A, D, A, E, A, and it can go on forever. As long as we start and end with A, and we put an A in between something new, it's almost through composed, where we have these B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. It can go on forever. But we just put the familiar thing in between each one, right? So it's like through composed, except we have the familiar stuff keep coming back. That's called Rondo. These are fun to write, actually, because it lets you come up with one really solid chunk of music and then, something different. And then you go back to the home run again, and then something different. And then the home run, and something different. And you can just kind of keep experimenting around. It's a fun form to work in. So those are just some of the many forms. What I'm going to ask you to do is when you start writing music, pick a form that you're going to use. I want you to know before you put the first note down what kind of form you're going to use, even if it's not one of these simple ones, even if it's a more complex one. We're going to talk about that in the next video. So let's jump to it now. We're going to talk about starting with a plan.